Thanks for coming out on this rainy night and for being a part of the New School's first Campus Sustainability Week. I just wanted to show you some of the events that are going to be happening over the next 2 days. We have an event tomorrow. It's the Green Fund 2010. It's all the people, the recipients from the Green Fund last year who are going to be presenting all of their projects. And then on Friday, we have 2 events. We've got a town hall meeting, which is going to be an open forum to discuss sustainability here on campus. And then lastly, we've got the Parsons Solar Decathlon team presenting their entry into the Department of Energy's competition in Washington. So I am Gwen Kilvert. I'm the Assistant Director for Sustainability and Energy Management here at the New School, and Josh Cohen, who is sitting up here in the front, is the Sustainability Coordinator, and we make up the Office for Sustainability. And just to give you an idea of, just very briefly, some of the things that we're working on, primarily we're tracking and reducing our environmental impacts. These areas include energy, water, and waste primarily, and increasing awareness and participation on campus is going to be a big part of our efforts. And I just wanted to bring your attention to the Sustainability Pledge if you haven't heard of it already. It's a campus initiative that we launched a couple of months ago, and we encourage everyone on campus to sign the pledge. And it's just really our first step in the direction of getting everyone to realize their impacts here on campus and to help us reduce ours. And among other things that we're working on is supporting efforts to grow sustainability learning experiences and ways to prepare our students for the careers of the future. So this event is a perfect bridge between what we're doing here at the New School and the world outside and the careers in sustainability that some of our guests tonight are going to be speaking about. So I'm going to turn this over to John Clinton, an associate professor at Milano, who is going to be our moderator tonight, but is also behind this event this evening. So.
Thank you, Gwen. We asked for Madison Square Garden, but they kept us to this small space, so we'll try to make do. Thanks for coming, as Gwen said, on a rainy evening, and for joining us to learn from our panelists a bit about their career trajectory, about the work that they do, and to answer questions that you may have about any specific substantive aspects of that work, and also how they got where they did. They are all alums of the New School. Unfortunately, a Parsons alum, Andy Zumwalt-Hathaway, who was going to be with us tonight, is unable to be here. He's stuck in Detroit, where he was not able to get another flight when his flight was canceled. So Andy won't join us. But let me introduce the panelists who are with us. I'm delighted to reconnect with all of them, actually, because I've been here at Milano for 10 years now, and they are, well, actually Milano alums. Starting with Esther Toporovsky, who's immediately to my left. Esther is the Program Director for Green Initiatives at Enterprise Community Partners here in New York, and urban policy grad last spring, I think, right? Esther, thanks. And Philip Silva, who is also Milano urban policy grad from a few years before that, I believe, and is the GreenBridge program manager at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. Seated next to Phil is Julie Caracino, who is the program manager for evaluation and research at the Consortium for Energy Efficiency. Julie graduated, I think, in mid-year last year from Milano in urban policy. And also with us tonight, next to Julie, is Rachel Dawn Fudim-Davis, who is the co-founder and director of sustainability strategies at Climafy in New York. And Rachel graduated last spring also, right, as well. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you for coming again. We're going to begin with hearing from each panelist for about 5, 6, 7 minutes about what their background is, what the organization is that they're working for. A couple have PowerPoint, so we'll see those up here. And maybe we'll just begin with Esther. Okay.
As John said before, I graduated last spring, Urban Policy Department at Milano, and I'm also sort of a double alum. I went to Eugene Lang undergrad, so I love the New School, and the New School really just spoke to me just in terms of my passion and just in social environmental, basically advocacy. I've always been an advocate my entire life. I have a flaming passion for it. and really wanted to just find an organization that had the same type of mission and passion I did. And luckily through Milano, through the urban policy program, I had to do my PDR, which at the time didn't feel so great, but that's our professional decision report. And through the PDR, I found an organization that I really wanted to do my sort of thesis with, because I belong to the Community Development Finance listserv. And so I specialized in community development finance and was part of the Chase competition down in New Orleans when I was at Milano, and really wanted to find an organization that did community development finance, but not just the finance aspect. I really, really wanted to find something that was also socially responsible and also believed in sustainability. So I was on that listserv, and my current boss, actually, she posted something about some sort of program or event that they were doing, and so I just went out on a whim and I emailed her and said, hey, can I come in and talk to you, or maybe somehow get an internship or do my PDR with you? And so I started my internship with them last June, and I've been a full-time employee. I was there for a few months, and they hired me on, so now I'm a full-time employee. I'm the program director for Green Communities for our Green Initiatives program. So that said, I'll tell you a little bit about the organization, because we do a lot. So basically, we started almost 30 years ago, and we've invested almost, I guess, $11 billion now to preserve and to build around now almost 300,000 affordable homes nationwide. And so we have offices all over the country. And I work for the national program, but I sit in our New York office, which is downtown. So if anybody wants to have lunch, you can come meet me downtown. And so about 6 years ago, Enterprise, we created our Green Communities criteria. And the Green Communities criteria, it's really a platform on how to basically green your affordable housing, and it's a nationwide platform, and it works, and it basically works in conjunction with the LEAD program and LEAD for Homes. And so basically, we've been extremely successful in working with our Green Communities criteria. We've basically stamped from across the country Green Communities projects, and we've invested around $700 million to date, and we've about almost 16,000 housing units have met our Green Communities criteria so far. And also about 75% of those are new construction. And we now, one project I'm working on particularly is our retrofit finance fund. And I work on innovative financing, sort of green financing projects. And so our retrofit fund is a way to basically target existing housing, because we know that that's probably one of the major problems to date. And so just to let you know, 39% of certified LEED homes are also affordable homes, so that's why our criteria really follows the LEED for Homes as well, because it's also a national standard. And just to give you an overview of some lessons learned, I'm going to try to go through this quickly. We've really learned along the way that within pre-development, our criteria is really specific and different because we take a holistic approach. You can't really sort of certify your project based on specific points. You have to meet very mandatory criteria. And within the pre-development, we really, really stress, well, it's mandatory to do a charrette process, which is basically integrated design. You have to get everyone in the room to basically say, how are we going to make this building green? And then the second thing we learned is throughout the construction process, you have to have quality assurance and verification. You have to make sure that if you say you're going to install something, it better be installed properly. You can't just check it off on a list. The third thing is post-construction. Well, after the building is built, you have to make sure that everything is performing up to snuff. So we have a big, huge sort of initiative now towards resident education and operations and maintenance education to train everyone, because at the end of the day, it's a living, breathing thing, and there's human beings that live inside the building. And we created a report in 2009 just to try to show folks, because it's very, very different when you're dealing with the affordable housing and not the sort of market level housing field. Affordable housing developers do not have a lot of money. It's a lot of layered financing. They don't have the resources. You have to convince them and you have to show them that going green is not going to be a huge weight on your pocket. So we created a study of about 27 to 30 buildings, just trying to show them what the incremental costs are to go green. Within that study, we basically, the short of it shows that your upfront costs basically are less than the sort of lifetime savings of basically meeting the Green Communities criteria in particular. And so right now, instead of just looking at sort of the financial benefits, we're focusing on the health benefits as well. And we're working, and we partnered with the National Center for Healthy Housing, and a report's coming out in pretty soon, or if it hasn't already been released. But the report basically is evaluating about 35 homes, and they're called Breathe Easy homes. So they're homes designed specifically with health aspects in them. And these homes meet Green Communities criteria, and we really just wanted to prove out that there are also health benefits as well as financial savings in your pocket to meeting green. And these are the benefits. Basically, the old homes, the symptom-free days for asthma for folks that were living in their old homes were about a week, and with the new homes upgraded are almost 2 weeks. And so basically, we also work on policy solutions, which is a huge initiative, because one of the main barriers basically are sort of policy barriers. You know, if you don't have folks on the Hill promoting certain sustainability initiatives, it's really hard to get sort of financing packages or things really moving forward. So basically, this map kind of shows that almost every state has adopted almost some sort of level of green, whether it's within their qualified allocation plans or to meet the Green Communities criteria. And so basically, states that have met our criteria are these following, from Colorado to DC to Washington State. Within their programs, their qualified application programs, they meet some level for affordable housing, the Green Communities criteria. And then this is just to show you our initiative moving forward. We're basically doing a very large data collection effort to collect all utility data, or really consumption data, for every single project that we touch, to make sure that we have a story, to make sure we can track the health of the building over the long term. And what you're seeing here is Energy Scorecard. Bright Power is an energy services company, and they've created basically a software that can show you the carbon footprint, how the building's performing, and they grade it in a very easy way. A, cooling index, doing pretty well. D, not so great with heating. So we're putting basically all of our projects through our investment arm, basically because we also syndicate projects. So everything we touch through Green Communities and also our business lines are going to be going through the Energy Scorecard. And so on another level, Green Communities criteria stresses you meet 15% energy efficiency. If you want to go above and beyond that, we also have an innovative financing solution, which is our offset fund, which is a program that I work on in particular as well, which is basically additional funding to reduce your carbon emissions further than the 15%. And so basically, we had Sean Donovan, the HUD secretary, come out and basically fulfill our sort of new call to action or strategic plan, which is to green all affordable housing in a decade. And we invested $4 billion, and we're hoping, basically our goal is to green everything we do, not just Green Communities. Our company across the board is going to be 100% by 2013. So I know that was a mouth load, but I wanted to give you just an idea of what we do. And in particular, I'm working on sort of all of those initiatives and really focusing on the retrofit fund and the offset fund and sort of innovative financing solutions. And I guess that's it for me, unless there's more questions. Or should I go over anything else?
I think we'll probably take all the questions after we hear from everybody. So
okay. Thank you very much.
Phil Silva's next.
So I'll just speak from here. Can anyone hear me? Everyone hear me? All right, so it helps me to sort of understand who's out there, and I'm going to do the thing I do with my students and ask if you'd like to move to the front. I think we'd appreciate it. There's so few of you that we can start to have a bit more of a conversation. But if you're going to stay where you are, which it looks like you are, help me understand, how many of you are graduate students? Most of you. And of the undergrads, how many Lang students? 1, 2. And Parsons? Okay, so Parsons didn't get the memo. That's fine. And of the grad students, how many Milano students? All right. So like Esther, I'm also a 2-time award winner here. I'm a Lang grad from 2004 in urban studies, and then went straight into the policy program at Milano, graduating in 2006, and have since had a rather eclectic career. And what follows is sort of a hindsight description of what that is. So like many people, I read Huffington Post every day when I'm looking for ways to procrastinate. And recently there was an article that said, amongst other things, that as new jobs start to come back in the recovery, as part of the recovery, or what we can call the recovery, that employers are looking for people who have an increasingly eclectic mix of skills in ways that we really haven't seen before. And where there would have been one job in the past, that one job's been sort of tagged together with 3 or 4 others. And now employers are looking for people who can do this weird mix of things that very often only really comes from having the experience of doing them. And so here comes the apologia. I've done a lot of different things in a relatively short amount of time. And I'm rather grateful for that because I think that it, to some extent, positions me better in the job market right now to have been able to do essentially what I'm going to categorize as two sides of the environmental movement right now, which is to work on urban scale projects and urban scale systems and land use and open space on one side, and to also have an interest in buildings and organizational systems on the other. And the two obviously do interact, and for those of you in Milano, I'm sure that you're finding that more and more in your work. But nonetheless, I think as a practitioner, this is a bit of a digression, but we've seen so much change in the environmental professional field in the past decade alone, where I think even just in 2000, any generalist who knew a little bit about energy efficiency and a little bit about botany and a little bit about environmental systems could sort of go out there and claim the mantle of the expert. And in just 10 years, we've had a division of labor that's really quite impressive. So now, even though I think that division of labor does certainly exist, there's still an opportunity for someone to sort of bounce around between the two and to bring lessons from one to the other. So I think the question and answer part of this is going to be far more interesting. So just sort of to give you the quick resume, I worked in government for the Office of the Public Advocate on land use and environmental issues right around the time that the Plan YC initiative came out. So I was in the unlucky position of having to be the guy who critiqued that thing for Betsy Gottbaum when a lot of people were feeling a lot of goodwill toward it, and rightly so. But we managed to find a few bones to pick about it. I've also worked for a group called Sustainable South Bronx and the Southern Bronx River Watershed Alliance on environmental justice initiatives, which continue to be extremely close to my heart as I work on projects around street tree stewardship and open space development. And did a stint here working on sustainability initiatives, and I'm so proud of the work that Gwen and Josh are doing these days. It really has taken off in ways that show that the New School can actually be a significant leader despite having a quirky campus compared to most other colleges, and can really set the standard. And now at Brooklyn Botanic Garden, again working on open space, community garden development initiatives, et cetera. And I guess the other sort of theme that I'd throw out there, if you haven't had to weave enough of them together already from my rambling, but is the idea of, for me at least, increasingly wanting to focus my career on collaborations and projects as opposed to necessarily positions and organizations. And I find myself increasingly having what some other folks might not call a life, but my spare moments focused on working with interesting people that really inspire me on projects such as mapping New York City street trees to create a web-based map for the volunteers who are taking care of those trees to communicate with one another, to working on performance art projects with dancers around what it means to actually be out on the street and doing that work and the performative aspect of that, to being a part-time faculty member here teaching urban forestry and the natural history of New York City. So maybe I'm generalizing too much, but I wouldn't say that there's a trend toward that, but I think that there's a growing opportunity for people who don't necessarily want to have a traditional career path, who want to try a lot of different things out, to not be ostracized as a result of that, and to have fun while doing it, which is not bad these days, right? So, yeah, I'm looking forward to questions.
Thanks, Phil. And I think Julie has a PowerPoint.
Thanks so much for inviting me to be part of this panel. I'm Julie Caracino, and I'm a program manager for the Consortium for Energy Efficiency. So I just want to give you a little bit more background about my career. I graduated from Milano with an urban policy degree in January 2010, and at Milano I focused mainly on urban economic development and energy efficiency issues. I completed my capstone project with the Rutgers Center for Energy, Economic, and Environmental Policy, where I focused on how to improve the evaluation of New Jersey clean energy program. And this project in particular really became the foundation for the work I do now, and also helped me get the job that I have now. Prior to Milano, I worked primarily in community development and in urban planning and urban design, and I have a bachelor's degree from Rutgers University in cultural anthropology, so this is actually really the first time where I've worked in a sustainability field professionally. So I started working for CEE in April of this year as a program manager on the evaluation, research, and behavior team. CEE is a member-driven nonprofit organization comprised mainly of utilities and non-utilities with ratepayer-funded natural gas and electric efficiency programs in the US and Canada. It also includes some public stakeholders such as DOE national labs, state and provincial energy offices, and regional and national efficiency organizations. We exclude from membership any organization that has a profit motive, like manufacturers of energy efficiency products. So the purpose of CEE is to help members develop common approaches to advancing energy efficiency. And we do this by providing a platform for members to exchange ideas and seek consensus with their colleagues, as well as industry representatives and Energy Star staff. By working together at CEE, administrators leverage the effect of their funding dollars and achieve greater energy efficiency for the public good. So we currently have about 115 member organizations servicing all or part of 43 states and 8 Canadian provinces. Last year, reporting CEE members across the US and Canada administered efficiency program budgets totaling $5 billion US dollars and reported savings equivalent to 55 million metric tons of CO2, which was up from 41 million metric tons in 2007 and 36 million metric tons in 2006. And this year, we're in the final stages of data collection for our industry report, and total efficiency program budgets, which we collect from members and non-members, are now up to $7.5 billion, and CE members account for about 80% of this total. So as the evaluation and research program manager, my role in the organization is to support the work of the evaluation committee and CEE's evaluation and research efforts. And I manage several large-scale annual projects, including the industry data collection, which I just mentioned, and the Energy Star Household Awareness Survey, which is an annual survey that measures awareness of the Energy Star label. In addition to these larger projects, I also tracked comment opportunities for CE membership. States are required to submit information on efficiency programs to the Energy Information Administration, and they also require various data to help them analyze the effectiveness of their programs. So when opportunities arise to submit comments on federal data collection efforts, we convene relevant CE committees to provide input and then vet the comments among membership before submitting a formal comment letter. So in terms of opportunities, I think energy efficiency is one of the fastest growing and most dynamic areas in the sustainability field. It's continued to track funding from various sources over the last several years, and we're now seeing more organizations, including utilities, community-based organizations, state agencies, getting involved in program administration, which means there's quite a number of opportunities to work in this sector. At the same time, the rapid expansion of this field has created some challenges in terms of coordination and goal setting. In the absence of a federal policy on climate change or a national cap-and-trade program, states generally set their own policies around energy efficiency, and this includes setting energy savings goals and defining key metrics. So from an evaluation perspective, this makes it hard to determine what the national impact of these programs actually is. And I think this challenge of how to coordinate between various entities is also reflected to some degree internally at CEE. Evaluation cuts across sectors, and it's been an ongoing challenge for the organization and now for me as well to try to coordinate with various program teams at CEE and with their committees to understand what the data needs are for the different program sectors and to make sure evaluators are getting the information that they need to evaluate their programs. But despite these challenges, I think that there is opportunity for growth in this field, and I encourage everyone to stay involved. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. And finally, Rachel.
Okay, hello everyone. Phil, I appreciate you starting it out like that because we have to remember who our audience is. So the nature of my work has been primarily entrepreneurship. I came into the new school thinking I would start a nonprofit that would propel Iraq and Afghanistan veterans into green jobs. But halfway through, I started a for-profit consultancy called Green Dawn Solutions, LLC. And the impetus for that was I was actually accepting an unpaid internship at the William J. Clinton Foundation in the Digital and New Media Department, which I was linked up with through Dean Servan at Milano. So I am currently working, that was about a year ago, I'm currently working on a startup with some former colleagues from Clinton Foundation called Climafy. Climafy.com is the TurboTax of energy retrofits. It brings expert advice, planning, and implementation to the average energy consumer. I'm really short. So Climafy was actually accepted to partake in the Industrial and Technology Assistance Corporation's Fast Track Tech Venture course several weeks ago, which is pretty exciting. iTech is essentially a nonprofit consultancy that is different than others because it's audited by an independent auditor. So they're primarily working to make sure that their clients see a positive financial return. So Climafy is at a really interesting and exciting point right now. The tool that we're working on is about 80% complete. Primarily what I do is work to make sure that the services that we're offering and then everything from our business cards to our real estate is as sustainable as possible. So maximizing everything from technology to whatever time we have and whatever resources we can sort of get our hands on through technology. Also, like Phil was saying, it's really good to have a diverse set of tools in your toolbox. I'm really good at business development, so I've been doing a lot of that business development and networking to network and also to gauge interest at various conferences and galas and other things like that around the tri-state area. So challenges. Funding is always a challenge. Esther sort of touched on this in terms of policies. Funding is constantly subject to legislation. So currently, for instance, Climafy is applying for an SBIR grant, and until the tail end of September, we were not sure whether or not SBIR was going to be continued. Ultimately, it was. So it was interesting because that presented an opportunity for us to be creative, to seek alternative funding from venture capitalists and angel investors, thereby increasing our skills and sort of practice pitching those types of funders. Then also going along and figuring out the process of federal funding, funding applications. So we are currently applying for DOE, and then across agencies, the DoD would be next until January, and then we'll see if it's continued further. And then in terms of opportunities, I would offer for all of you, wherever you go, ABS, always be selling. You know, you never know who you're going to meet. You never know who you're going to be talking to, whether you're on the subway, the bus, at events, wherever you go, just make sure that you're practicing that, because it's one thing to do it in a mandatory career development session, but it's another thing to do it live. And I think that that's where, for me personally, I became more confident in my ability to do that, and then was asked to do it more. And then also write if you can, if you have time. I know you guys are busy. but I wound up meeting a PR consultancy called Woodbury and Associates at an event that actually an alum and professor here, Bonnie McEwen, connected me with. It was a Millennium Development Goal event, and I happened to connect with these people. And I've been writing for their magazine since its inception, called Millennium. So it's just another thing to have, again, polishing some of your skills and making sure that you are increasing, the diversity of your resume and your skills. I studied economics at Rutgers. And after that, I was a legal assistant, and I managed legal assistants at a for-profit, obviously for-profit, on Wall Street law firm. Simultaneously, I was lobbying at the federal level for progressive energy policies, as well as the state level in my home state of New Jersey. And that sort of bled into my work at the law firm. So I catalyzed their internal greening efforts, which resulted in their participation of the Law Office Climate Challenge back in 2007, which is a pretty big deal for people who really were not thinking about it. But presenting that economic case is really something that speaks to people in organizations. So if you're having trouble greening wherever you work, I would recommend that you start talking about it with people and get some feedback. So fall of 2008 is when I started at Milano. I was pretty intent on, again, what I wanted to do when I came here, but I took the Social Entrepreneurship through Design course my first semester because I was waived out of the prerequisites because I studied economics, and my client was Sustainable South Bronx initially. So my team built a business plan for an upcycled furniture company. It was a very exciting process. And at the end of the practicum, we, as part of our final response, pitched to investors. I really, really liked that whole experience, and I guess that's why I really sort of went the route of entrepreneurship and looking into further building up net impact at the new school, which Esther and I had a hand in co-founding and sort of resurrecting, and it is still a live chapter on campus, and it's presented a lot of opportunities to me and some other people at the new school. And actually through Nevin Cohen, while I was studying at Milano, I was passed along an advert for an internship at New York Restoration Project. So I worked to build up the government and policy relations arm of NYRP. That wasn't the job description, by the way, that I had responded to initially, and I wound up taking on a lot more also internal greening efforts there, which you might not suspect in a green organization, but it does happen. So it's something to look out for in terms of opportunities. I had also volunteered with Global Green. I take wicked fast notes. I type very quickly. And that's, again, something, if you're asked to note take, do it. I learned a lot about Global Green and what they're trying to do in New York City, specifically their Coalition for Resource Recovery. And I helped to forge a partnership with the New School. The New School is actually helping in part of a pilot program with them and Starbucks to transform waste into wealth. You can look that up. But I would just offer to you that from my background in the private sector, working a 9 to 5, I knew that was not what I wanted to do, but I used that experience and was able to juggle work, grassroots activism, and family. So I knew that I wanted a better quality of life for me and my family, and I'm having a lot of fun with Climafy. It's very risky, and at least initially, not tremendous monetary gain, but we're seeing a lot of interest from various types of funders, so we're really excited.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks to all the panelists for those opening remarks. What we'll do now is take questions from you. I'll pose some questions to the panelists, and I'll try to get them engaged in some discussion among themselves. So let's go ahead and begin. Is there a question that anybody wants to ask of any of the panelists at this point? Yeah, right over here.
My question is just related to your success with the scorecard as a standard and the luck you've had working with other stakeholders and kind of getting some consensus on how it's measured and what's measured, and also if you have some thoughts on that as well, I'd appreciate it.
I guess I can start. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Well, yeah, I would say the biggest thing is in terms of data collection, I'm sure you guys have the same thing, and cooperation and trying to get what you need. I think right now it depends on where you're working. It could be a regional challenge. Certain utility companies their bills, the sort of funding and the expenses is sort of married with the consumption data. All we need is the consumption data, right? So sometimes it's hard to get that consumption data, and some of the utility companies don't have automated systems to sort of download or input whatever consumption data you need into your system, right? So it's definitely sort of a regional issue, and it depends on where you're working and what utility you're working with. As far as energy scorecard, we sort of vetted and we looked at many different softwares. Now, there's EPA Portfolio Manager, which is free, which is large, and which houses a whole lot of data. But EPA Portfolio Manager has some limitations, so we're kind of using EPA Portfolio Manager as a data storage system, right? If you don't want to do a further level of analysis, that obviously costs a little bit more to invest in a software system. So EPA Portfolio Manager, you can put all your system and you can organize it very nicely, but we looked at it, there's great software, Peregrine Energy Day. There's another one called WeGoWise, Energy Scorecard. We saw tons of them, and they're all still sort of in the middle of being created, right? I mean, they do exist, but there are still limitations with every one of them, and every one of them has very specific nuances depending on what you need. So the first thing you need to look at is, what do I need this data for? What are my sort of goals and my outcomes, that kind of thing, and what is it that I want to measure? Because these groups are willing to work with you depending on whatever you need. We found that Energy Scorecard was just easy. It was an easy scoring system. These guys are New York based. They already had sort of a portfolio that we could see. And in terms of benchmarking, it was just easy to see sort of how the scorecard worked. And just the level of analysis that it brought to the table was what we were looking for. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's been a huge process, and we're creating a huge platform across the board, and we're partnering with, because we don't want it to be just about sort of enterprise community partners initiative. We want it to include SAFE with the Stewards for Affordable Housing, LISC, almost every affordable housing or community development organization across the board. We want everyone to get their data on board, so there could be benchmarking for affordable housing, so you can look at your building and compare different types of building to say, how am I really performing? Is this really making a difference at all? You can't tell unless you've benchmarked and really just had a baseline for how the building's performing. So we're trying to do that across the board, and we're not trying to promote Energy Scorecard at all. We're saying, as long as all of these systems are working together, fantastic. You can use any system you want. So it's just what worked for us.
Great.
So yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the scorecards, I actually wasn't aware of what you mentioned, the energy scorecard. We've been looking at times to ACEEE. They benchmark states, or they basically collect data and compare one state with another. And for the first time this year, they're actually going to use the data that CEE collects for our industry data collection. But just as an organization, although CEE collects data on budgets, expenditures, and impacts, we make it really clear that we're not coming down on any one policy position, and we don't advocate at all. So we're basically just putting the information out there. Just generally in terms of data collection, it is a big issue for program administrators. It's sort of something that's ongoing that we deal with, and energy consumption data is huge, and it's in demand, and there's the RECs and CBECs that's collected by the EIA. And some of the issues are have to do with timing, how quickly can the federal government sort of collect this data and then release it. And the other big issue is how detailed can the data be, because there are some trade-offs there in terms of resources. What we've gotten from our membership is that, more than anything, they'd like to get as detailed data as possible so that they can generalize to their states, rather than having like regional level or national level data. So yeah, it's just sort of an ongoing process of revising that collection.
Take another question? Well, let me ask one then. clearly in the response that both of you gave, there was an indication that collaboration is really critical. What are some of the challenges of collaboration, both within your organization and working with external partners? Difficult? Easy? Presumably somewhere in between? Julie, do you want to speak to that at all? Or others, please feel free to join in.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it a bit in my presentation. I mean, I guess the whole mission of my organization is based on bringing people together, and and the membership doesn't really work in a vacuum. They want to be connected to industry because the primary goal is to advance the market for energy efficiency, and we also have to coordinate with federal agencies on most of the projects, and we have a long relationship with Energy Star, and it's a little bit different. It's a little bit difficult when you're dealing with different agendas. I mean, obviously, when you're dealing with the federal government, they have their own policies and positions and capacities, and our members obviously have very different agendas, and they're often sort of motivated by what their own state regulations are around energy efficiency. Internally, as an organization, we're also sort of organized as teams, and I kind of threw the program areas up there on an early slide, but we have residential, commercial, industrial, natural gas, evaluation, and behavior. And typically we've worked as small teams, and there hasn't been a lot of collaboration between teams, so I really actually don't have a good idea of what some of my other colleagues are doing, and the organization has been trying to address that. And there's been a real need for that, especially on the evaluation team, which does cut across the different sectors. We're trying to figure out how to better coordinate with the other committees to try to understand what their data needs are, and how we can then connect them to what's happening in the federal government in terms of these large-scale data collection efforts.
I guess I could talk a little bit more about collaboration. I just feel like there's not enough collaboration, and I think like you were saying, a lot of folks are just interested in their own agenda, and it's just amazing when you're dealing with sort of the larger mission at the end of the day is, right, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, it's a global issue. It's not just a U.S. issue by any means, and we're starting sort of a global initiative and symposium. I'm looking more at social housing, because that's what most folks call affordable housing internationally, and just the fact that the United States hasn't taken on any sort of plan for carbon emissions reductions kind of really speaks to the sort of mentality here. So in terms of collaboration, we're with the data platform, we're trying to collaborate with other affordable housing organizations. And I think when you're trying to deal with something like, say, the energy scorecard, there's other organizations that are also trying to sort of promote their software. So you have to be sort of wary of what folks are trying to promote, and not trying to just use one or the other, but trying to make sure that all of them, when you talk to them, and if you're creating anything, let them know that you don't want to invest in anything they're doing unless it can collaborate with other softwares, unless it could sort of collaborate with other organizations. Because for us, what we do, even the Green Communities criteria, it's free. You can do free online certification. We're not doing this to make money. We'd really like folks to actually create durable, long-lasting, healthy housing for folks to live in, because there's no reason you should live in a 50-year-old building and be an elderly person and have mold in your hallways. It just shouldn't exist. So more collaboration. I think definitely with HUD, we do quite a bit of collaborating, and also trying to, sometimes we're sort of working side by side and simultaneously on the same things. And so being able to sort of collaborate those efforts, because HUD has a green retrofit program. They're also working with Department of Energy. They're also working with Department of Transportation now, and also with EPA on sustainability initiatives. And just to sort of make sure that when you're working with any organization at all, to make sure that you're never just mired in the details of the day-to-day of what your organization is trying to accomplish, that you have to be reading, going to events, still just learning and being a student, no matter what, even if you've left grad school, make sure that you're just well invested in just the entire sort of global initiative as you're moving forward. And I think people get so mired into what they're doing, whether it's work or whether it's school, just trying to keep an open lens. So I think collaboration is just kind of opening your lens in whatever you're doing.
Phil? Just to throw a few more ideas out there to sort of try to categorize and abstract a little bit of both what Esther and Julie said. Within organizations, and small ones with staffs of 6 people, all the way up to large ones with staffs of 8,000, I'm often the herald of Gen Y approaches to work, right? And I recently got to take a tour of Google's offices in New York with coworkers at the Botanic Garden. And boy, were our minds blown by the way that they do their work. Because whether or not they're succeeding in not doing evil, I don't know. But what they are succeeding in is managing to bring people together across a lot of different skill sets and interests. And there's a reason why they're often ahead of the curve in terms of innovation and good product. And it's because they're fairly open-minded when it comes to just throwing people together. And they don't worry so much about who the boss is, and they don't worry so much about what department you're in. You just got a project to do, and you figure it out. And I think that there's I think the generation that's coming up right now through undergraduate school is going to be primed for that type of work. In particular, those of you who are from Lang, you are doing that right now. And to some extent, those of you in Milano as well. Once you've been through lab, you can do that. And then at the other extreme, there's collaboration between organizations or even between individuals. And I think in this movement in particular, because it is so, in this work in particular, because it's so grant-driven, folks are often fighting for scraps. And when they're not fighting for scraps, they're fighting for prestige, because that can sustain you when there's nothing else. And that is unfortunately often a barrier to collaboration. And I do want to touch on, in particular, dashboards and energy rating systems. It's sort of the Wild West out there right now. And if you're in a position to be the person who has to crunch those numbers, you'll get any number of calls in any given week from people trying to sell you products that purport to do it all for you. And if you find yourself in that situation, please do be skeptical. Bring your skepticism with you from grad school, and ask to see the fine print, because the best calculator, the best dashboard is going to let you know all the assumptions that it's making. And to me, that's often the most important part. No one really wants to get mired in the details, but you need to know why you're multiplying by a certain coefficient to arrive at a carbon equivalent. And at the end of the day, it's assumptions, and a lot of it's about decisions that we make collectively about why this and not that. The point is, it's got to be put out there. And to bring it back to collaboration, if folks are not really coming to the table with trust, then you're not really going to get that transparency that you need to actually know what those numbers represent. So there's a little bit of sophistry out there, and you got to keep your eyes open. That said, there are great examples in the other direction as well.
Yeah, I guess I would just echo that last piece. Specifically from a startup perspective, to partner with people or companies, and we actually did find one in our ITAC class that we are partnering with now. It's really interesting and wonderful to find that you can embrace a reciprocative relationship. I think that's probably the most important advice I'd give to all of you, making sure that right off the bat, you put it on the table. Like you were saying, this trust piece is so important, that you're equally going to get the same amount of rewards, and that you're really going to be beneficial. The partnership is going to be equally beneficial for everyone involved.
So I can't resist Esther's use of the term grad school in the context of thinking about the competencies that are involved. I heard about decision-making, critical thinking, collaboration, and the capacity to communicate in a way that builds trust. Those are all important. Another question from all the way in the back.
I'm a second semester Milano policy student, and just kind of following from what you guys have been saying about collaboration and sort of interconnectedness and everything. The sustainability field, in my opinion, and I don't know, it seems like it's sort of an increasingly specialized kind of thing. And Phil, you were just talking about this idea of, well, you mentioned, you were talking about like non-traditional career paths and the idea of collaboration between organizations. And thinking forward to, you know, when I graduate, when everybody sort of gets out of school, I'm wondering where you guys might see the future of the industry and whether you imagine it to be a more collaborative atmosphere between these really specialized organizations, and whether, you know, what the potential for that is, whether it's even possible. Because, you know, it seems like there are a lot of these companies that are doing great things, but that there's this potential for so much more if there were more collaboration between them.
Somebody like Phil, do you want to?
I think we need, if I can, I think we need both. You know, we're going to increasingly need people who are able to parse through the intricacies of what we're trying to solve, the problems that we're trying to solve, which admittedly are some of the most complex problems on Earth right now. But by the same token, we need people to weave all of that together and translate that. So being a generalist is itself a niche as well, if you can have the fortitude to keep learning, like Esther said, because you sign yourself up for being a student for life if you're going to be the person who's bringing all those people together and translating for all of them. And very often, there's a musician, Brian Eno, who finds himself doing the same thing as a producer. He's often having to translate for one type of person to another, one type of artist for another, one type of creator for another, and often finds himself in a situation where he's defending one side to the other and then goes to a conversation with the other person and has to defend in the opposite direction. So you need a little bit of armor in that sense too. Anyway, that's a bit of an aside.
Sounds like an assignment I just gave, actually.
Yeah, there you go. See, so take John's class.
Anyone else respond to that? Esther, please.
I mean, I guess what comes to my mind is sort of being kind of a strategic thinker, a big thinker, a macro thinker. I think there's a lot of people, either in the corporate, nonprofit, whatever field you're in, within any organization, to become a good organization or art project or whatever you're doing, you're creating a small movie with a few friends. You know, I think you generally have the most successful outcome when you have maybe one person who's a strategic thinker that can really try to align everyone's needs and whatever those are. I think there's so much creativity in the field there, and it's just amazing how many demonstrations, technologically, there's so many things going on, artistically around sustainability, and I think there's large organizations with great ideas. The organization I work for is pretty large, doing a lot of great things, and everything has, you know, either a person or a sort of vision or a mission that's strategic, that sort of weaves in, and if you could sort of get that sort of vision, I would say, not mission, as a sort of core DNA to whatever you're doing, whatever it is, then the outcome is usually a little bit more successful. So that's just sort of my thoughts on what you said. I don't know if it makes any sense, but there you go.
Anyone else?
Well,
Julie, please.
yeah. I would also just echo what Esther was saying, that I also think that being able to be a strategic thinker and be able to look at the larger picture is just really going to benefit you and is really necessary. I think there are definitely positions and opportunities in this field where you do have to have some sort of specialized skill, but I think it becomes a limitation almost if you can't really step back and then also kind of understand how your role fits in with the bigger picture, and be able to work with other people who have different skill sets, essentially.
A term that I've heard people use is expert generalist, you know, the capacity to combine the ideal combination of both of those. I was struck by what you said, Phil, about you have a job to do and you get it done, you figure out how to do it, the initiative and the knowledge of what resources you can turn to, the people, as well as other kinds of resources in that respect. Should we take another question? And I'll have to remind you to use the mic next time so that we can be sure everybody hears. Another question from the audience over here. Go ahead.
I'm curious how each of you have met more of the technical challenges of your jobs, because inevitably in sustainability we come across principles of engineering and economics and climatology, and what advice do you have for people who are maybe a little intimidated by that, and what you've sought to overcome those challenges?
Well, definitely try to maximize your assignments here and use them as often as you can to better increase your knowledge of the field, whatever it is you're interested in, be it sustainability or whatever else. But that's actually really helped me specifically, because having to write a 12 or 8 page paper on something, you really know it after you're done. And then, of course, talking with people from diverse backgrounds, and I think that the New School does that pretty well. Just in terms of your classmates, I'm sure you have such different backgrounds. Really getting to know your classmates and learn from them and garner whatever resources you can from them. Every day, read various different blogs if you can, and if you can become a member of whatever organization, be it the planning organization, just keep reading. And the more you can, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but if you can write about a subject and keep writing just as you do for assignments after you graduate, I'd highly recommend that.
I would say also just know your limitations in a big way. When you're going to any kind of job, don't sit there and pretend like if they give you some assignment and technically you really don't even know how to approach it, don't pretend like you know how to. Don't be ashamed to ask questions and to see what they already have on the table. It's amazing to know what kind of resources or technical challenges that they've already come across. And if you're just honest and you're open and diplomatic about how you sort of present whatever your challenges are. I know, I'm not an engineer by any means. I don't know energy sort of like the back of my hand, but I'm dealing with this sort of retrofit pilot, and it's quite complicated, right? And so I work with a consultant, J Hall Consulting, and they're just amazing. Working with this guy, Doug King, since I've started. He's just this amazing MIT engineer, and the way he thinks is phenomenal, and that's all he does. And so I work with him if I have a question on specific things for the offset fund or the retrofit fund, and we have the most amazing, inspiring conversations back and forth. He's trying to understand the way I think. I try to understand the way he thinks. I tell him what I need to get done. He tells me what he can do, and I think, wow, that's brilliant that you can even think that way. I mean, so there's Excel workbooks that we have to create. I don't understand macros like he does. I know we didn't learn it in Milano. I don't necessarily need to learn macros. I'm not an engineer, right? So you have to know your limitations and work with what you have and just be honest. So that's my advice in when you go out into the work world. And you keep learning too.
Well, I mean, certainly the most technical of stuff that I do is data collection and analysis, and I got that from Milano. I think while you're in school, it's a good idea to try to obtain as much of a diverse skill set as you can. I mean, I didn't really have the vision that this is what I would be doing after I graduated, but I thought, just in case, let me at least learn this. And it was just enough to get me to be able to start working in this field. And I think also, just in terms of knowing your limitations, I don't think you have to be afraid, because I found that there are a lot of people when you're in school, even after you graduate, that are willing to talk to you and where you can go to get information and to try to exchange ideas. And you really don't have to be an expert in everything, because there are other experts out there that you can speak with.
Just 2 experiences to reflect everything that's been said already. When I was at Milano, there was less cross-collaboration with Parsons than there is now. And so I took the summer intensive in architecture at Parsons and managed to convince our department chair to count that as one of my electives. And that, simple as it was an exploration into architecture, it nonetheless gave me a literacy to start to tackle building systems afterward. So I think those of you who are in now have a far easier time of being able to muck around with people who think about building systems, architecture, and engineering than we had then. So do take advantage of that in that particular direction. The other thing I'd say is, just to echo, that writing is a form of thinking. It's how you clarify your thoughts and sort of test what you know and don't know in order to refine it. My first job out of Milano was working for a green building consulting firm. And my first project was, Esther and I worked in the same office together. My first project was to take some notes that an engineering team had done around a cogeneration plant for One Bryant Park, the new Bank of America tower, and turn them into a report for NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research Development Authority, which had funded their feasibility study. And it was quite literally meaningless. I didn't really know what the hell they had written. And in order to translate it for a general audience, I had to translate it for myself, which means I had to understand it. And I had to do it quickly, too. But in the process, I learned a lot about sustainable energy, more about cogen than I've ever actually had to use. But it was the writing process that got me there. So even if it's just for your own sake, sit down and write.
Yeah. And just to expand on that a little more, just because folks are still in their graduate programs, I just think it's so important to know what you just said about has to be turned around quickly. Whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a for-profit, they really, you have to pull out whatever the facts are, kind of like you had to do for your PDR with the PowerPoints that you're creating. And people want results. They want to know what you're doing. They want to know what the results are of your work, and they want to know it fast. And they want you to be able to generate some level of report. So you need technical and writing skills that can be turned around in sort of a very, very fast way. And I'd also advocate for, if anybody isn't a part of the process, the Community Development Finance Lab was just unbelievable. It gave me skills that I need, that I still use. The fact that I can develop a pro forma from start to finish sort of wowed the folks that I work with now, and I understand finance, I understand layering finance, I understand the affordable housing industry, and I took the real estate finance classes, so I took a lot of practical classes, and that's what helps you. Not all the theoretical classes, I haven't really used it all in my field, but the writing skills are key, and being able to turn things around quickly and using those practical skills to develop sort of concise, clear reports. That's advice I can give you. It's helpful.
Well, I certainly will underscore the importance. I read a fair number of papers, as you might imagine, and I think that one certainly distinguishes oneself from other potential applicants to a position and on the job itself by being adept at writing and being facile with that. Turning maybe in another direction, you have all been students here at the New School, so it wouldn't be surprising that you might have an interest in advocacy in this area. How do you balance the work that you do with your advocacy interests? Is that a challenge?
Well, now we have this great thing called social media, and it's been wonderful to be able to juggle activism and work and family from home, from your computer, wherever that is or wherever you are. But utilizing technology, again, conference calls have been great. I'm still organizing. We had a panel discussion with Ted Glick, a longtime international environmental and anti-war activist here at the New School about a year ago. And he and I are still working on that. So just, utilizing Google Groups, pretty much all the technology you can to share whatever is going on, to organize people around events. Like I volunteered at a Cool Roofs event for 10-10-10, 350.org this year. So it's something that, you can juggle, but I think that utilizing those tools, social media, spreading the word if you can't get there is just as, if not more than important than actually being there physically.
And cut yourself some slack, too. Like, you can't be everywhere, and, not every day can result in global change. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just need to pick your link in the chain and keep hacking at it. And if If you do that, eventually that's the weak link. Mm-hmm. Who knows, right? So yeah, cut yourself some slack too.
Yeah. And I would say just individually, whatever you're doing, if you believe in a certain path, just walk the walk if you're talking the talk. So I mean, for me, I believe in local food. I belong to my local CSA. I go to my local green market. Just last weekend, we're opening a Fort Greene Clinton Hill Food Co-op. If anybody lives in the neighborhood and already belongs to the Park Slope Food Co-op. Anyway, so I was painting, and a big group of us got out there, and it's a Sunday, and rolled our shirt sleeves up, and we're creating a food co-op. And so you can do things locally. I'm a big fan of just joining your whatever kind of community board, or even if you just have a block association. Block associations are the best things in the world. If you want a more green block, there's the greenest block in Brooklyn or anywhere, and you can do little things. Plant your window. It's a nice thing to do on the weekend. So you can have a good time. You can be involved in your community, know your neighbors better, and just and be sort of sustainable at heart on a daily basis. That's what I would say.
And I run the Greenest Block contest, so thank you for that plug. So if you live in Brooklyn, join your community board or your block association. Thank you.
Let's see if there's another question from the audience. Yeah. Want to come up to the mic?
Hi, just wanted you to explain the net impact here at the new school. Sure. That's it.
Oh, okay.
So Net Impact is an international nonprofit organization. It started as Students for Socially Responsible Business back in the early 90s. And Esther and a bunch of other students and myself, and there's other students right now on campus, co-founded and sort of resurrected a chapter. Basically, there are professional chapters all over the world and student chapters of people who are just trying to change the world through business. So it's really tapping into the private sector as to what they can do to make sure that we're not just focusing on the single bottom line, but the triple bottom line, people, planet, and profit. And I would go as far as to say the quadruple bottom line, which I know some of John's students are hip to. That includes internal practices, which is something that we touched on a bit here, not just in terms of sustainability, but also collaboration and efficiency of the organization itself. So yeah, we can talk offline after, and I can connect you with the people who are running it now.
Is that related to Ashoka?
Yeah, it's sort of a partner organization, and Starting Block is also an outlet of that, which is a fellowship. It's called the Institute for Social Innovation. I remember you, and I would like you to be involved in it, but we should touch base offline. Yes.
Oh.
If anyone would like to know more about it, certainly come see me.
Esther, you want to say anything about Net Impact, your experience with it?
No, I would just say it's a great opportunity for networking and meeting folks, and connecting with other schools. And when you graduate and you get out of school, you can connect with other folks and alumni and businesses and people that are just sort of thinking sustainably in whatever field. I think it's a great sort of a networking opportunity.
Take another question right here.
Hi, I'm Amy, and I'm an organizational change management student at Milano. Interesting that you're all urban policy, I think. No?
I started as OCM and did the certificate, so I believe in that more than anything. The internal change makes a huge difference. I'm
also a community development finance lab grad, and it's fantastic. I wondered two questions. What networks or organizations, professional organizations, do you belong to and really participate in and value at this point? And two, if you were designing a class for the new school students, you a year ago, to know what you wish you knew or wish you had more practice in now, what would that class look like? What would it include?
And I will take notes on that.
I've had the chance to do that, and it's very particular for me because I'm increasingly focused on urban ecology and volunteer management of urban infrastructures. That's a mouthful. People coming together to take care of things when government can't. And it's been great in my urban forestry course to give students the opportunity to, they get certified in something called Citizen Pruner, which is a program administered by a group called Trees in New York, where they essentially get trained to go out and cut broken branches off of trees in New York City, and they get a little license to do it. But when they're done with that, then we get into the sort of social critical theory around what it means to do that, and why people would come together as opposed to advocating for government to take on that role. So for me to marry critical thinking with practical knowledge and going back and forth with that as much as possible, that there doesn't need to be a divide between the two. That's, for me, it's just been a lot of fun because it sort of keeps me on my toes in my practice as well. And as far as networks, this is going to sound tongue-in-cheek, but my community garden, you end up with this really interesting cross-section of people from any particular neighborhood in a place like that. And it opens up opportunities that you wouldn't have thought otherwise. So that's mine.
I guess with me, I would say networks, net impact, USGBC.
The U.S. Green Building
Yeah.
Council.
Oh, sorry. U.S. Green Building Council, net impact. CDFI, listserv. I try to sort of cut across larger national folks, AIA people that are just touching specific fields in certain ways, and then locally, I mean, community boards, block association, that kind of thing, just to become sort of locally involved in what's going on. Carbon finance. I get newsletters from them. I also belong to sort of it's interesting, a legal, sort of a green legal blog or firm, but that's just to get updates on what the sort of legal field is doing, because a lot of the time people don't realize that they have to sort of connect all the dots across the board when you're talking about connection. So just, I do get a bit of a blast of, emails and stuff from different associations, but it helps me sort of keep apprised in affordable housing finance. So a lot of those organizations, and I try to dabble and read as much as I possibly can, or be involved, and also join sort of webinars or anything that's going on things that I maybe don't already know about. And as far as what I would gain from classes, I would say what I learned most from were the classes where I had. I did elements of finance, and I did real estate finance. So I did a lot more of the finance classes in the community development finance lab. But I think what helped me were some of the classes where we had case studies, and I had to sort of dissect a case study, and I had to present specific findings on a particular case, and I had to back that up with either some sort of financial analysis or spreadsheet, because to me that sort of mimics more of what I'm doing in the real world than a lengthy 45-page paper with a bibliography at the end. So I think definitely having assignments that are due soon, and not only one or two of them, but almost every single class, where you have a case study, almost like the sort of Harvard format or formula for case studies, I think really, really works, because that can work on, I think, probably in any field. And really giving folks Excel knowledge, and I think just understanding how to work with a spreadsheet, how to come up with the right kind of numbers, and how to connect the dots if you're trying to make a case. It's so necessary. And what else? Just being able to write something clear and concise and to the point, and in 2 pages. Say what you have to say in 2 pages in a memo format. That's what I would say. So.
Well, in terms of professional associations, right now I belong to AESP, which is the American Energy. I forget what the SP is. Service professionals, and they basically just have really interesting brown bags every once in a while, which are webinars, and they're really useful for networking. In terms of classes, I really enjoyed the classes where we got to work with clients. So the Urban Policy Lab course, and also the Newark Issues and Sustainability course, where we worked with, my team worked with Newark's sustainability officer. I just thought that was really useful to be able to sit down with a person and be able to try to understand what the problem is, and then again very quickly try to come up with solutions, and then be able to have explain those, explain your analysis and solutions verbally and in writing. I just think it, more than the particular subject matter, you just get so many skills that you're going to be using out in the workforce, and it's also very fun.
Yeah, so I would advocate, I was actually on the nonprofit management track for more live clients in that track. That was similar to what the others said. Definitely the point when I knew this is what I want to be doing, and this is how, these are the skills that I bring, and here's where I lack, and here's what I need to work on. So I think that it was wonderful in terms of highlighting all of that for me. I'm a lifetime net impact member. I'm interested in planning. I don't think I ever will become a planner, but I'm a member of the American Planning Association. And I would urge that all of you get involved with the alum network here. And if you can and you're undergraduate, I'm a lifetime Rutgers alum as well.
Hey, just one more quick thing. Build your own network too. Yeah. You're the only one that can tailor it to what you need. And though we lionize a lot of people in what we do, none of us are such celebrities that we won't answer an email, right? So reach out to the people that you want to work with, that you want to learn from, that just are interesting to you, and start talking to them, because chances are they'll reply, and you never know when that might be helpful.
Yeah, Phil and I have been in touch, I don't know how many times over the last few years, making connections among various contacts that we have, and it seems to oftentimes lead to something. I would mention the Sustainability Practitioners Network, SPN, pretty active here in New York, and have a listserv, and you can show up at all kinds of different events for that. Of course, here, there's an awful lot going on at the New School, and take advantage of that as well. There's many, many events and symposia, and again, networks in addition. We have time for maybe one more question. Anybody would like to pose one more? Okay, well, I hope it's been as helpful and informative for you as it has been for me, and I want to thank all 4 panelists for joining us: Esther, Phil, Julie, and Rachel. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.